In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am, endlessly, and that I never stop loving him.
A Florida woman who left her boyfriend to die in a zipped-up suitcase learns her fate in court.
Court pronounces sentence as follows.
In October, an Orange County jury found Sarah Boone guilty of second-degree murder for the death of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr. According to prosecutors, in February of 2020, the couple were playing a drunken game of hide-and-seek when she zipped him up into the piece of luggage, then recorded a cell phone video as he struggled to breathe. And ultimately, George never made it out of the suitcase alive.
We'll hear from a video that began at 11:12 p.m., 45 seconds, on February 23rd, 2020, in Orange County, Florida, is a suitcase on the ground, face down, with the zippers facing the floor. You will hear Sarah. The defendant will say, "For everything you've done to me." Sarah. "For everything you've done to me." Sarah. You. And then the defendant laughs. Sarah. You. And the defendant laughs.
But the defense painted a different picture of what happened. Boone, while on the stand during her trial, claimed she acted in self-defense after suffering from physical abuse within their relationship.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
The trial itself lasted a week, and for the jurors, they came back with their decision pretty quickly, in less than 2 hours.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree as charged in the information.
The month after she was convicted, Boone filed a motion for a new trial, citing several concerns about the fairness of her trial, including prosecutorial misconduct, improper expert testimony, and denial of a court-appointed counsel. But the judge quickly issued his ruling on the motion.
After reviewing the motion and the state's response the same, the defendant's motion for a new trial is denied. Based on the court's review of the record, the court's participation in the trial, and the review of all the evidence, and the court's prior findings and rulings at trial and prior thereto.
So Sarah Boone then had to face her sentencing, where she came face to face once again with Jorge Torres' loved ones. In an emotional message to the court, George's mother, Blanca, said she'll never forget when she heard the news of her son's death.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did. And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, "Can I come in?" I said, "Okay, yes." And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment. My son is not here no more. She don't only kill my son, she killed a father, a brother, an uncle. It's been hard. I'm a family because all the brothers, they will always work together. But now it's like something real love is missing. Sometimes when I look out the window, I'm waiting for him to come and say, Mom, I love you.
George's sister Victoria didn't mince words about her brother's killer.
I just want to make it clear that George deserves justice. As far as my other brother and Sarah deserve to rot in jail. Sarah has caused a lifetime of pain, a lifetime of horrible images, a lifetime of hearing my brother George plead for his life. This is just this moment for all of you. For me and my family, it's forever. Such a simple thing as using a suitcase is so triggering. I try not to close it all the way. I leave at least like 2 or 3 inches for the zipper. And it might sound crazy, but it just helps me. She really has flipped my family's life upside down. And I just hope that we can truly get justice for my brother.
The Sarah Boone case has been ongoing for years, and there are still so many more victim impact statements that we'll get to in just a sec. But I want to quickly give a huge thanks to our sponsors who help us continue to bring you these stories like Upside. You might be asking yourself, what's Upside? Well, it's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. Sometimes I only have time for a quick lunch break, and then there are times I can have a nice sit down at a restaurant, and I can use Upside for both. Plus, I can use Upside to get cash back when I do. It's really so easy and simple to use and completely free, so why not? This is actual real cash back too. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight to your bank account. So here's what you do. You download the Upside app, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside, you pay as usual using a debit or a credit card, and follow the steps on the app and get paid. You can use Upside at places like Chipotle, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell, and so many other places. So why not check it out and see if your favorite spot is on the app? To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside, or scan the QR code on your screen, use our promo code LCNews, and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Again, that's promo code LCNews for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. Anna Victoria Torres, George's daughter, appeared virtually to give her victim impact statement. She explained to the court nothing has been the same for her since her father's murder.
The murder of our father has impacted us on so many levels and in different ways. I myself, for the first year, would wake up screaming every morning or night, wishing I was having a nightmare, only to wake up to remember all over again that my father is gone and I'll never be able to hear him say he loves me ever again. To know my siblings have been affected in such a way that they are now different. They have had a piece of their heart ripped away from them, all while her son gets to hear his mother's voice and see her alive is pathetic. Because of you, Sarah, my sister is heartbroken. Because of you, Sarah, my brother is left wondering when he will ever see his father again. The loss of my father has left me with chronic depression and anxiety. Seeing any moments of fatherly love or kindness being shown between others in real life or even on TV leaves me in complete shambles. Seeking therapy was a must in order to navigate through my workday without a random breakdown. Thoughts of my father's demise still enter my mind ever so often. I'm left either angry, sad, or sick to my stomach to think of how his final moments were. Jorge Torres, my incredible father. Not only was he my father, but my best friend. My personal comic provided me with wisdom and knowledge, creative and loving dad, an older brother, an uncle, a cousin, a friend, a son, and above all, our father. He was human and deserved to be treated as such. My father, Jorge Torres, was one of a kind, an absolute gem. Unfortunately, his light was dimmed on earth by evilness, but with us, we will forever make his name live on. Especially Sarah, I pray that you see his face when you see him at night.
When it came time for the defense side to present their own witnesses, they chose to call those who knew Boone only after she got to jail, including Diane Smith, a prison chaplain for the Orange County Jail, who had kind words about Boone's progress behind bars.
Well, I first met Sarah. She came in. We have a Christian dorm, and Sarah enrolled in our Christian program. And she was in my classes for a year. And she was very sincere in her efforts to change her life and to be a better person. And I found her very helpful. She was kind and good to people. She loved to serve. And she helped the new girls that would come in, the younger girls. She would mother them and be very kind and very helpful. And then after she graduated from the program, I was her counselor for the other 3 years. And I always found her, very sincere and, trying to do better. I spoke with many inmates that knew her and was associated with her. And they spoke very highly of her and said that, she was helpful and kind and tried to help other people. And I just found her to be, very sincere and trying to be a very good person and change and help people.
Boone's former bunkmate, who was locked up with her for 3 years, said Boone was her best friend, and she's helped her tremendously when the two were behind bars together.
She helps everybody. She's always, spirit. She helped me a lot, and she would come to me. She talked to me all the time and pick me up when I was down, or if I didn't know something. She's good. She was a good person to me. Mistakes happen. She always helped. She always helped people. She was always helping everybody in the dorm. She, even like her artwork, she did art. Anybody need any help or needed anything, they'd come to her and she'd help them. And even if they, did wrong to her, she would still go back and help them and praise with them and pray over them and everything. It's just...
Boone's supposed kindness even extended to a pen pal. Lana Albert spoke virtually, and technical issues prevented her from being seen on camera. She said Boone offered up her kidney, even though the two had only known each other for less than a year.
She has a natural instinct to help reach out and give of herself. Her time and energy and love, especially to those who are hurting or damaged. You all have seen her fight for her own life and truth here. I tell you this, she fights even harder for those she loves, giving time, attention, and companionship without a single thought for her own gain or what somebody can do for her. And one huge example is in the matter of our friendship. As I said before, I have end-stage renal disease caused by a genetic illness called polycystic kidney disease. As my life has progressed, things I have taken for granted have been taken away from me. I could not appear in court in person because I can no longer walk, as my dialysis treatments have affected the circulation of my legs and has confined me to a wheelchair. To say that my life has radically changed is an understatement. Through it all, I have many friends and family I love and cherish. Sarah has distinguished herself differently in this way. In the course of getting to know her, I started sharing the progressing state of my health. It was like lightning had struck her. The moment Sarah had learned the depth of my struggles health-wise, she straight up offered strenuously to donate a kidney to me. I got to tell you this. I hope she's not mad for me showing this, but she had no hesitation, no concern over personal risk or personal gain. I want to convey to this, out and around the world, that is merely offering is a good and heroic act. I've had many friends. I've not had one outside of my brother who has offered me a kidney. That is huge.
And as expected, Sarah Boone chose to give a final message to the court, but she started off with a pretty bizarre anecdote seemingly to describe herself.
Kintu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by Jorge Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable.
Like her testimony during trial, Boone reiterated her claims that Jorge was abusive throughout their relationship before ranting about forgiving Jorge's family, as she claimed they turned a blind eye to the abuse.
My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive Jorge for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed, for terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. I forgive Jorge for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who Jorge was capable of and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Farrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what Jorge was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. For being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. Having 20/20 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as Jorge threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. Jorge made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, Jorge is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am endlessly, and that I never stopped loving him, in all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness, but due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me.
Boone slowly wrapped up her speech by saying she wanted a second chance and redemption while touting she's a survivor of abuse.
In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused. I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry. Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him.
Right before the judge made his determination on sentencing, both the state and defense presented their arguments. Before trial, Boone was offered a plea deal of 15 years, but rejected it. During the state's argument during sentencing, the prosecutor seemingly asked the judge not to sentence her under the plea deal and slammed Boone for not taking accountability.
The offer of 15 years in no way represents what this case is worth, or what George Torres' life is worth. That is an offer predicated on a particular circumstance, a circumstance of a first-time defendant accepting responsibility and giving every benefit of the doubt in coming to court and saying that they are ready to be punished. Those conditions were never met. So then we turn to this case, and we turn to this crime, and we turn to the actions of the defendant of taking the law into her own hands and murdering George Torres. She has never shown remorse for that. She didn't show remorse for that here today. She again painted herself as the victim.
Meanwhile, the defense urged the judge to consider that this case isn't so black and white.
And these crimes don't occur in a vacuum. That there's generally a history, especially involving a domestic couple, a history that comes into play that must be explored. And a lot of what Sarah Boone testified to here today probably happened behind closed doors. And we all know that many times we do not know what happens behind closed doors between a man and a woman in their home, unless there is some reason for the neighbors or law enforcement or somebody else to get involved. And that happened in this case. And so gradually over time, as this event occurred, there was an investigation, and it was learned that there was a history of domestic violence.
When it came time for Judge Michael Kranick to make his decision, Boone appeared emotionless when she learned her fate.
The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial, the victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. The court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, the court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily.
Boone's sentencing sparked an emotional reaction from Jorge Torres' family, marking the end of a case that's been ongoing for 4 years. Sarah Boone will serve out her life sentence within the Florida Department of Corrections, but she has 30 days to appeal her sentence. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.